and help take it to the next level. Many times it's the owner.
Yep.
Quite frankly, he's challenged with spelling IT.
Exactly.
Because his role was originally sales when he started the business, something like that. But now he's responsible for sales, for HR, for finance, for purchasing, for inventory management. IT is 5-10% of his time. He has a problem. It's called 1-800 Who's Gonna Help Me?
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. How different could electrical and HVAC industries be? Shouldn't their processes be as simple as distribution and field services? What is so complex about their e-commerce processes? Well, electrical and HVAC industries are unique as their products need to be aligned with the trade associations. If they don't follow the same coding standards, there might be issues in integrating with the buying groups and other collaborators. They also have unique processes such as electronic signature and dispatch to delivery confirmation. In today's episode, our guest, David Gordon, discusses the e-commerce challenges for electrical and HVAC industry. He also discusses why these industries are lacking compared to their peers in innovating their processes and providing cutting-edge customer experience. Finally, he discusses why these industries are unique with their ERP needs and why the vanilla ERP systems would fail for them. Let me introduce David to you. David Gordon founded Channel Marketing Group in 2001 to support manufacturers, distributors, reps, and service providers in the electrical distribution industry with their strategic planning, marketing, and market research needs. In addition to helping clients accelerate their performance and gain insights into their customers, he is also the publisher of Electrical Trends, US Lighting Trends, and HVAC R Trends. The goal of these digital platforms is to provide information, insight, and ideas to help distributors and manufacturers. Areas of focus include strategic direction, channel strategy, marketing strategy, customer satisfaction, e-commerce initiatives, and other revenue-generating initiatives. He also facilitates NEMRA's POS initiative and their Strategic Advisory Council. David has also written for TAD Magazine, Electrical Wholesaling, MDM, iMark's Focus publication, and other organizations. Prior to founding Channel Marketing Group, David was VP Marketing for SourceAlliance.com, a company founded by Rockwell Automation, VP Marketing and E-commerce for iMark Group, and spent 15 years in the performance marketing industry developing incentive programs for manufacturers and distributors. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey, David, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Sam. Looking forward to having the discussion with you today.
And this is going to be really exciting, especially when we get into the depth of the industry. That's where the real fun is, especially for me, when we talk about the specific business processes. And for people, they are always going to be thinking that every industry is same, every business model, every transaction is same. So this is going to be so much fun. Just to kick things off, do you want to start with your intro as well as your current focus, David?
Sure. Well, I'm president of a company called Channel Marketing Group, and I started Channel Marketing Group 22 years ago. And we work with distributors, manufacturers, and reps in the construction and industrial trades, with probably about 90% of our business today in the electrical and HVAC space. And I started it after spending about a year with a .com back in 2000. That we became a .bomb after missing round 2 financing, but we only had $140 million going through us. Spent 5 years with one of the marketing or buying groups in the electrical industry. So really got to understand both sides. And then spent 15 years in the performance marketing industry. So I had exposure to about 60 different industries in helping companies achieve their growth goals. And our focus is in the areas of strategy, marketing, and market research. So helping companies drive growth. And that's a fun part, especially nowadays with what's going on with technology and how that's really been embraced as a evolutionary process at the customer, which is driving a lot of change then on the back end.
Yeah, could not agree more. And it's always going to be the customer experience that is going to drive everything. And if you are not able to meet the customer experience expectations, you are probably already behind.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because one of the things that I've noticed with so many technology companies, even distributors, they focus on the technology part and they focus on the back end part.
Yeah.
Versus interacting with the customer to see where the customer is and where not only so much where they are today, but even laying out breadcrumbs for the vision for them.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest areas that, I think was somewhat of a miss with a lot of the consulting pundits, the big name ones that are out there.
Yeah.
Let's go back, 7 to 10 years ago, when how many of them were saying distributors are no longer going to need to exist.
Yeah.
Amazon is going to take over the world. Every order by now is going to be electronic. And it was going to be electronic as going to a website or what I'll call hunt and peck. But none of those companies actually did research to the customer side to understand the customer buying journey. And meanwhile, distributors are still around today.
Yep.
And they're still delivering their value proposition. And if you look at hunt and peck ordering, in a lot of the construction and industrial trades, it's still only a small percent of the business because the customer still wants to hit one button and have a throat to choke. Not everyone's looking to do business with Amazon.
Yep.
Nor does, quite frankly, Amazon want to do business with everyone.
Yep.
Now, people say to me today, well, Amazon should go and buy Graybar. They should go and buy Grainger. Well, if they wanted, they could have done that before cheaper.
Exactly.
But if you look at it from a pure financial viewpoint, it would be a lousy investment for Amazon.
Yep.
Because if they had that much, and they've got lots of money, would you spend the money there buying these type of distribution businesses, getting low single digit, mid single digit rate of return? Or would you invest it into AWS or the medical field and things like that, where there's much more growth and higher net profit opportunities? So that's why I think, more and more companies need to talk to their customers to understand those models and where they can add value through the technologies.
Yeah, could not agree more. Great assessment. So we are going to unpack a little bit more overall from the industry perspective, as well as, how companies like to think in these patches, especially from my experience when I deal with these customers. But before we do that, we have one of these standard questions that we ask every single guest that come on the show. And that is going to be, David, your perspective on business growth.
There's lots of opportunity for growth. A lot of our businesses within the electrical side, as much as the growth rate has decreased from the last couple of years, which quite frankly, it kind of had to. You can't live on an industry average of 18 to 22% growth annual. That's just unsustainable. But in the electrical industry, with the government funding that's been coming down over the last couple of years, between monies that were in the CARES Act, that was in the infrastructure bill with the Inflation Reduction, lots of government stimulus there, a little thing called electrification.
Yep.
Still need stuff for the electrical industry. The war in Ukraine has impacted commodity costs.
Yep.
So that helps. EVs also affect the price of copper because there's more copper used in an electric vehicle than a combustion engine.
Yeah.
So construction now has a competitor for that commodity, so the price of the commodity goes up. So that's helped. And the after effect of COVID, meaning the supply chain disruptions.
Yep.
There's a lot of companies are now enhancing their industrial base here. So that's helping the electrical industry. So it's viewed that for the next 5 to 10 years, the electrical industry will do pretty well. So that's really helping. Now, obviously, the residential side is challenged.
Yeah.
That's due to the Fed, but the market's good.
Yeah, could not agree more. And I think there are definitely opportunities, especially in the electrical market at this point of time. So let's go back to our earlier conversation that we were having, as well as, we are going to unpack a little bit more one by one, I guess. Okay. So first, I think you really like to talk about the strategy, the vision for these companies. Execution obviously is going to be there, but companies need to have the strategy as well as the vision. That's what you spoke. So where do you see the real gap when you are looking at any of the specific instances of companies in the HVAC as well as in the electrical industry? Amazon was one example that you mentioned that they probably don't want to go there. What else are you seeing that these companies don't necessarily have the vision and they are probably behind from, let's say, other industry?
Well, it's interesting with the electrical industry because a lot of other construction trades
Yeah.
look towards the electrical industry as a leader.
Yeah.
And they say, well, the electrical industry is only 10 years behind the time because plumbing and HVAC are 20 years behind the time.
Yep.
So, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You're not where you necessarily could be, but you're still ahead of a lot of others.
Yeah.
This industry is not going to get like the medical industry or the electronics, where industries need to continuously improve, and there is no end game.
Yeah.
Is product content.
Okay.
Because that's what powers not only the ERP systems, it powers the eCommerce systems.
Yeah.
It's going to be integral for AI. More importantly, it's integral for the labor force.
Okay.
Why I say for the labor force is there's a lot of turnover happening in the labor force. A lot of people have been in the industry 20, 30, 40, 50 years who are retiring.
Yeah.
An institutional knowledge base goes out the window. The trade slang for products, what works with what, that goes out the window. It wasn't captured and digitized to train that next group. And you made a comment in the intro about getting deep into the industries. There's a generation that has been in these industries that had passion for the industry.
Yeah.
Even if people left the industry, inevitably they came back to the industry. It somehow got in their blood. But what we're seeing more and more of nowadays is where it's not so much a career and a passion versus its job. So if it's short-term jobs, how do you get that institutional knowledge for product and process? So we see that. We're seeing obviously the whole trend towards data analytics.
Yeah.
And not only capturing it, and the tools are there for capturing the information. I mean, worst case, you can always use Excel, right?
Yeah.
Now, granted, there's better ways, but it's interpretation of that information, make it actionable. That's part of that next generation. We've started seeing some things that are coming about and being introduced relative to AI.
Yeah.
And part of that's because of the focus on Chat GPT.
Yeah.
And what the capabilities. And we've seen some things that people like a Microsoft are coming out with right now that will tie to the vision. But some of this is stuff that needs to be shared with the sales organization, shared with customers to get their feedback to then enable the pace of adoption. Because you can't just force feed and say, here's all this technology, I expect you to use it.
Yeah.
It's got to go through the back end. That also needs to tie to the strategy. And what I mean on the strategy is with the aging of a lot of the ownership.
Yeah.
Electrical industry, we have identified 65 companies that have sold in a little over, basically in 26 months. That creates channel strategy change for manufacturing.
Yeah.
It also then says to a distributor, what is your strategy? Is it long-term? Is it short-term?
Yeah.
Because that then drives what their business strategies need to be, what their technology investments should be, what their technology infrastructure. The timeline is relatively short. How much do you invest?
Okay.
So all these start going in together.
Yeah. So very interesting layers there. So I don't know, which direction you want to take. I am very interested in taking the product content layer, to be honest. The reason for that is because that's a very interesting comment. And this particular industry has a very unique flavor of product content. In fact, when you go and you have been talking about 3 different industries, construction, electrical, HVAC. Okay. In that as well, there could be some patches where the product is going to be very different. I'll give you some examples. Okay. So number one, in the electrical space, the product is driven by the electrical codes, the SKUs that you are going to have. Okay. So that's very unique. And that's why, I analyze ERP systems for living, and I'm always trying to figure out, okay, why the hell these specific ERP systems exist in these spaces and why are people not able to use some other system. And then I am looking at layers. Okay, what are the unique nuances of these systems that, okay, something vanilla is probably not going to work for these industries, right? So the electrical codes typically drive the SKUs, and I don't know if they also drive the finished product in the electrical industry. But electrical codes are going to be drivers, and they are slightly more. You have these standards there, so a little help. Okay. Now in the plumbing industry as well, my understanding is that you are going to have the codes that are going to drive your SKUs, that are going to drive your product. Now, when you get into the real construction, things are real gray. Okay. And thinking from the product perspective, David, you have no idea how hard this is. Okay. Most business owners, when I try to sort of work with them in creating these bombs, in creating these SKUs for something they have been selling, maybe they did like $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, easy to do on a spreadsheet. But when you have to grow from there, you have to figure out your product model. If you cannot figure out your product model, good luck with your e-commerce. It's not going to work.
Right. Well, the data part, whether it's product content or informational from your sales and margin stuff, really is a different form of inventory.
Exactly.
You've got your inventory in your warehouse. You've got your inventory as your information. The product content is needed to populate the ERP because that's what's driving the sales orders. That's driving the information going back to the supply chain. The UPC numbers need to match to make ease of doing business back to the supplier. And I know EDI, there's better tools than EDI, but in these trades, EDI is essentially used for a lot of that interaction back. You got to get systems to match. So that's at the ERP side. When you get to the e-commerce side, the customers now want to be able to go on a website, see the product, get the spec sheets, get instruction manuals, see videos, see brochures, all that basic stuff to make sure that they have the information not to order, but that they can do their estimate. So it's the digitalization process of really what inside sales used to provide and outside sales used to provide. Instead of them going out and handing a brochure, the customer wants self-serve. The other thing the customer wants digitally is they want to understand product availability and access to their price. So the descriptions have to be clean. The information has to be searchable. All that stuff really becomes important. The other part that ties to some of this, especially when you talk about ERPs and why they are not industry agnostic without a lot of work, comes a lot of times the modules that play into it. Because especially like in electrical, depending upon the distributor, 30 to 70% of their business is project oriented. Quotation, it's not stock and flow. There are some of the ERP companies that have developed modules specifically for that, for lighting, for gear. Some of them have developed tools strictly for managing wire. To go and take something that has been, I'll take a generic, I'm going to say a bad word, an SAP. And just say, all right, I think that should be able to work out of the box because it's an ERP system. And don't get me wrong, SAP's got a good name, but now it needs to be customized for that distributor to create those type of modules. And it begs the question of, does that distributor really know what's really fully what they need, or the aggregation of other people's best practices? Or are they going to limit themselves to their historical knowledge? And that's why we see in some of these industries, industry-specific ERPs or modules that have been created specifically for those industries. Years ago, prior to in the electrical, a lot of consolidation by F4 and Infor, there were more ERP companies. And it was interesting how distributors would select an ERP company based upon who their competition was, meaning who the distributor's competition was. They would identify which of their distributors had which ERP system. And some of them would purposely choose something different. Whether it was good or bad was irrelevant. but because it was different because they thought it would give them a competitive advantage. And in my opinion, and I know I'm not a techie, okay, so I will defer to you, Sam. At the end of the day, it comes down to how you're going to use your system and
Exactly.
how you're going to use the information. Because you can always go and hire some techies to write and modify code or create your own mod if you really need to. But just because it has a different brand name doesn't mean you're going to have a better business performance result. Does that make sense?
It does. And honestly speaking, and I don't know when you talk about the industry and how big these players are, and my assumption is going to be that this market is going to be significantly fragmented. That's my understanding, especially if you look at the SMB electrical HVAC market. We are probably talking about 10, 15, $20 million, maybe $5 million. That's the range that we are looking for. Most of the distributors, obviously, there are going to be the bigger ones as well. But those bigger ones have already figured out their processes. They are going to be slightly more streamlined overall in terms of the kind of SKU mix they are going to carry, the kind of products they are going to carry. Even the projects are going to be streamlined. I mean, they are not going to take every single job out there. Whether this is going to be just rewiring, just ripping apart, getting something from junkyard and reconfiguring it. I mean, obviously these smaller ones do whatever they can do in their power. Now, when you
The
talk
biggest
about,
challenge that a lot of the small guys have,
yeah,
and I'm going to say small being defined as less than 25 million,
yep,
they don't have the personnel
exactly,
to evaluate really what their need is. B, they don't have the personnel to implement them. They have almost the equivalent of a network administrator,
yep,
an implementer, someone who can troubleshoot the system, not someone who can optimize the opportunity and help take it the next level. Many times it's the owner.
yep,
Quite frankly, he's challenged with spelling IT.
exactly,
Because his role is supposed to be was originally sales when he started the business, something like that. But now he's responsible for sales, for HR, for finance, for purchasing, for inventory management. IT is 5-10% of his time.
yep, I
If
agree.
he has a problem, it's called 1-800 who's going to help me. With the bigger companies, they've got people. That makes a big difference.
Yep.
I've had a client a couple of years ago. They were about 12, 15 million at that stage.
Yeah.
And his ERP company, he had for about 10 years. He had 2 branches.
Yeah.
No, 3. When he needed to give me sales data, he didn't have one database to pull it off of. He had to send me 3 separate reports for each branch. And I had to pull it all together and aggregate the stuff for the customer, by customer.
Yeah.
Because his ERP system couldn't. And I said, if you want to have some growth and you're going to be in this business longer term, maybe think about upgrading. Not so much even modernizing. Just get a system that'll be easy. He says, I'm only going to be in this for about another 10 years. And the cost of not only the system, but the pain of conversion and training my people, it's not worth it. Right now, I'm only paying, I think I was doing like $500 or $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
For maintenance service. He says, why do I want to go and invest $100,000, $200,000 into it?
Yep.
All the training and all the disruption. I don't need it. As long as I get my reports at the end of the month and the system, everyone understands the system and it accepts an order, I'll live with the pain. That was the thought process.
Yep.
But that's where there becomes a disconnect between strategy, your vision and strategy, and your tool. Now, the good thing is, in his case, his vision was, hey, I just want to kind of stay small and service my 3 counties.
Yep.
If he had vision for growth, he's got to reorientate his mindset to invest into that whole IT infrastructure, not defined as the ERP system, but defined as the personnel resources that are going to be able to help him take it that next step. It's a different mindset in that regards.
Yeah, could not agree more. And let's touch on these layers a little bit. And I especially want to touch on the tech comment that you can hire techie anytime and they can do whatever you want them to do, obviously. There is a little misunderstanding, and I don't know whether you agree with this or not. Okay. Hiring techies is very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Programming is the easiest thing that anybody can do. Okay. Getting results from any technology, any program is the hardest thing to do in general. Okay.
Mhm.
And this is sort of the double-edged sword. Most companies, when they are going to be small, they like to think of customizing. If you talk to a billion-dollar company, this is what they are saying. I don't want to touch a single line of code.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't want to customize anything. I
Mhm.
will change my business. I'll change myself. I'll change my
Because they
processes.
totally agree, because they understand that the provider has aggregated input from lots of different sources,
Yeah,
and it's found ways to optimize that process. So you're buying expertise
exactly.
versus the smaller company has the mindset that they know it all. And all that they really know is the way that they've already done it.
Exactly.
But the reality is those bigger companies have higher net profit for a reason.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Mhm.
David, when you talk about these technical initiatives, especially if they are going to be about customization, okay, they are probably one of the deepest rabbit holes that you can ever get into. There is
Mhm.
no coming out of it, okay? You cannot come out of them. They are
Yep.
that bad. To be honest, as the technical person myself, in my company, I'm never going to own a single line of code. That is not the business that I'm in. Okay, as soon as I customize something, as soon as I own something, that ownership is very expensive in
Yep.
general. Okay, because that is not shared by 5,000 different companies. The reason
Mhm.
why these ERP systems, e-commerce systems, they are so difficult to build and implement, and there are only so many companies that are
Mhm.
there who can do it well, and they can really scale to the business models of a billion-dollar company. It's very,
Yep.
very, very hard to create that, with the custom logic, but companies still have the tendency, especially the smaller ones.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. What years ago I ran an IT department, many, many moons ago,
Yep.
which was probably two of the worst years of my life. The only good thing is I was also still doing some other stuff at the same time.
Yep.
But between then and other times when I've had IT related projects, the part that gets frustrating is quote unquote the system analyst. People who want to ask you about what your needs are and specifications. They don't want, a lot of them don't think. They're just coming in and asking you what you want.
Yep.
And then they just go and give you what you want versus thinking if there was a different approach or a better approach. They're not adding knowledge
Yep.
and insight into it. And as a small company, and remember, a lot of these small companies, the people who are running them have been running them forever. It's their first and only job.
Yep.
How do they really know what would
Exactly.
really be good? How do they have vision? I don't necessarily want. I don't know what I want, so don't ask me what I really want. I know what I can give you as inputs. I know what I want as an output. How it gets done in the interim, in that middle, there are other people smarter than me, smarter than a lot of these distributor owners who should be able to figure that out. I know what I can give you as an order. Here's what I need on the other end. How it happens, you tell me, which is to your point. These software companies have seen it, have done it how many different times. They've aggregated best practice. That's when I'm writing a check, I'm buying best practice. I shouldn't be buying code. Does that make
Ex-
sense?
Exactly. That is such a great point, to be honest. Okay. And I think best practices is where the real IP is, in my experience. And that's where these guys should be focusing on. So rather than being fixated on this is how my business works, these are my inputs, they should be thinking about how the other companies are doing that. Okay. How
Mm-hmm.
the other industries are doing, and
Mm-hmm.
how can I streamline my process so that I am going to be similar to them. Now, I will talk about a very specific process in this industry. Unless you have any other comments, David, go ahead if you have comments.
Well, the key is how you execute and optimize upon it.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, there's really three masters that a company has. One is its customer.
Yep.
How do you deliver for your customer? How do you make the buying process easy, the material delivery process easy? At the end of the day, that's what the customer is interested in. How do you make it easy for your suppliers in getting the orders to them and being their lowest cost customer? Because if you're their lowest cost, God, maybe the flip side of that is you're providing them the highest net profit to them. Plus, because the other benefit of doing that is therefore that supplier is a low-cost supplier for you from an operational view. And then the third is your employee satisfaction. Because if the system takes work off of them, you have higher satisfaction. If you have more satisfied employees, do you think that they have more capacity to service customers, whether that customer is internal or external?
Exactly.
Do they have the ability to deliver more productivity? Are they happier? God forbid they might have a little 3-letter word. You know what that 3-letter word is, Sam? Fun.
Exactly.
That's sacrilegious in a lot of these companies.
Yep. So very fun, by the way. Now, let's talk about one of the specific process. And, I'm touching on your comment related to, hey, you know what? I have my inputs. I'm giving you what I really want. You guys figure out. Really smart people, they can figure these things. No big deal. Okay. In this industry, there's a very specific process called proof of delivery, which is very common. In general, I don't know whether that is common in all HVAC, electrical. I have seen it in HVAC 100%, electrical maybe, in some jobs, maybe not. But proof of delivery is very common. Now, this is a very legacy process in general. Okay. You required signatures at one point of time when you had to reconcile whatever you shipped from your door to whatever got received. And once you have the signature from your customer, then that was sort of the approval that you can match the invoice. Otherwise, they are probably not going to pay if you don't have their signature. And that's why the whole process of signature existed. Other industries, they probably took it off. They don't really have that anymore. I mean, not for every single good when Amazon ships to you, you sign anymore, unless you are buying something that is going to be $2,000, $5,000. Maybe it's a passport. Then you sign. If you are shipping $10 good, do you really need to sign? Now, that process has not changed. This is just one example in this industry. There are many processes which sometimes are there just because company thought so that they need to risk. They have been doing this for the last 20 years. And now, if that is going to be your input, you are asking the technical guy to customize the hell out of the system. What is going to happen? That's probably going to be $1 million disaster because the data model was not created to support these processes. And you are customizing something that is not necessarily compliant to that process. So now, yeah, go ahead.
Where I'm going to go, though, Sam, is a couple of different scenarios. Okay? I don't disagree with you on like the Amazon scenario.
Yeah.
But then you get the issue of come Christmas time and your package doesn't show up.
Yep.
And what happened to that package? After FedEx dropped it off on your front door, XYZ person, and I won't even use a name, so we don't get into any racial profiling or anything like that, somehow showed up on your patio and walked off with it.
Yep.
Did that package show up or not? Whose fault is it? Amazon does send you an email saying that XY, whatever you ordered, is being shipped that day.
Yep.
Get that. Look at DoorDash. Everything that they deliver, they take a photo of and send you a text on it right away. So they're validating everything there.
Yep.
The third area, and I'm not disagreeing that there could be opportunity to remove it, but this gets back to talking to the customer.
Yep.
If you talk to your contractors, you talk to your industrial buyers, what's their thresholds? Are all of them willing not to have it?
Exactly.
If some of them want it, therefore you need the functionality, you could probably turn it on or off by customer if you wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should, but the functionality, it's easy to edit the functionality to make it customer specific. It's easy to change it by dollar value.
Yep.
But if you don't get your customer input when you make a change like that, that could be significant to your customer base, then you're making a mistake. So before you go and arbitrarily say we don't need this or we do need that, talk to the stakeholders, whether it's internal people, whether it's sales, whether it's customers, on something that could be significant, get the input. Doesn't mean that everything shouldn't be questioned, but get the input from the people who would be really doing the questioning. Don't have an insular mindset, because a lot of companies have an insular. They're just only going to talk to the 5 people, 10 people who are in that room. Just like your top salesperson for a company cannot speak on behalf of all salespeople, cannot speak on behalf of all customers. Let's say he's got 50 people on his account list.
Yep.
guaranteed you 5 customers represent 80 to 90% of his business.
Yep.
He's probably talked and gotten input on something from 2 or 3 people. Okay, is that customer research? He got input from his 3 best customers.
Yep.
Does that tell you anything about a mid-sized customer or about a small customer? The customer who doesn't even have a salesperson?
Yeah.
This is why it ties back to the business strategy too.
Yeah, exactly. And I completely agree with your assessment there, to be honest, that the way the industry is going to operate and some of these things become the processes and the constraint for the system, to be honest, okay? Because they are not going to be optional, and creating those constraints around the industry could be a very complicated as well as the expensive process. And that's why some of the specific systems are only going to work for those industries because they are going to have very unique processes. And I don't know how the bigger ones typically deal with it. Maybe they also follow the similar standards. Maybe it is because of the industry. Maybe Amazon is doing that as well. So your comment related to how Amazon handles it, just because they send an email or DoorDash takes a picture and send you out, that does not mean that the customer cannot say that, I did not receive and I'm going to file a claim. That could always happen. And typically, in my experience, I think the way they are accounting for this is you are always going to have a little bit of damage that you have to account for. That's almost like a return sort of percentage that you're accounting in your business model that, okay, if I ship 100, 20 are going to be problematic customer, you sort of account for that in business model. And then, what is the cost? What is the cost of getting the signature versus what is the cost of getting these returns? That's how Amazon, in my mind, likes to think. And that's why they don't have...
They budget it the way retail does.
Exactly.
It's a percent of sales.
Exactly. And they have factored in that as part of the business.
Yeah. The challenge in the construction trade, so electrical and plumbing, especially plumbing, when they're delivering their material,
yep.
A, you've got a cost factor. B, it's going to a job site.
Yep.
C, the contractor needs that to finish a project.
Yep.
The industrial facility needs that material for a project or for an emergency.
Yep.
So a lot of times the cost isn't so much the cost of the material.
Yep.
It's the opportunity cost.
Yep.
So the customer really, it's like the information's there to help the customer and to protect the distributor, because it's not that you had to write off the cost. It's the risk of losing that customer.
Yep. I agree.
If Amazon lost you and I, they wouldn't even notice it as a rounding error.
Exactly.
Well, maybe adding up my wife and kids' orders, it might be a rounding error. Good thing they're not going to see this, right?
Yeah. Awesome, man. So that's it for today. Do you have any last-minute closing thoughts for our listeners?
Oh, they've enjoyed the opportunity to share, enjoyed our conversation. We've got a lot of input and ideas that help people on strategy. And if they want to learn more about us, they can go to channelmkt.com. We also run blogs in the electrical industry and the HVAC industry. So they can just go to electricaltrends.com to get a sense of our thought process for the electrical industry, and hvacrtrends.com for the HVAC industry. And I appreciate the time, Sam.
I appreciate you as well. And my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be that every industry is going to have its own nuances. Electrical and HVAC are probably going to be one of the most unique ones that I have personally, because of the way the industry is organized. So make sure you pay attention to the product model, your data structure as well, before finalizing any sort of. On that note, David, thank you so much for your time. This has been a powerful episode.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about David, head over to channelmkt.com. It's CHANNELMKT.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.